friends, and shalom. This is Tom with Truth Ignited Ministry, and today I'm bringing you part 2 of my message titled Genesis 3. To begin, let's talk about what I sometimes call the tree of forbidden knowledge. Genesis 2:17 says, "But the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you must not eat, for when you eat from it, you most assuredly will die." Having gone through the serpent's plan of attack in the first message, I want to turn the attention now to the tree itself. The Bible calls it the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but as it was the one tree in the garden that was prohibited to eat from, I would say that we could alternatively call it the tree of forbidden knowledge, as the knowledge held by the tree was prohibited by God. There are things that we're not meant to know, and it seems that anytime people go on a quest for extra biblical knowledge, they get wrapped up in weird and goofy beliefs. In other words, bad things always result from chasing after that which is forbidden by Scripture. There's a song that I like to include in my playlist whenever I'm exercising. It's from a Bible-based Swedish metal band called 7 Days, and the song is called Under the Sun. The chorus of the song says, "I accept that some things under the sun are not meant to be understood." This, of course, is built on the opening statements of the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, Deuteronomy 29 verse 28 says, "The secret things belong to Adonai, our God, but the things revealed belong to us and to our children forever, in order to do all the words of this Torah." This is part of the Torah, being in the book of Deuteronomy, and therefore it is to be treated as a commandment. Not following this passage would be a sin, as 1 John 3:4 defines sin as breaking, transgressing, violating the Torah. As with the tree of forbidden knowledge, there are things that belong to the Father, and we're not to be concerned with them or seek to discover what they might be. It would stand to reason that if something is secret and belongs to God, then the truth of that thing would never be able to be discovered by any human in this life anyway. So, if something is forbidden knowledge and cannot be discovered by people while living on this planet, what do you suppose is the source of anything that appears to be hidden and secret knowledge? God is not the author of confusion, as Scripture says. So where there is chaos and confusion in theology, perhaps those things are driven by Satan. Think about topics like eschatology, whether or not there will be a rapture and when exactly it will take place, or topics like the Unitarian versus Trinitarian debates. All these things do is serve to create chaos, confusion, and ultimately division. Who do you suppose is behind this, as those things are not clearly revealed in Scripture? In Christianity, the concept of a pastor is not the same as anything that may have existed in biblical times. The Christian pastor was born out of the pagan Greek and Roman philosophers. There is a well-documented history of this, tracing to at least the 4th century, when the new Roman religion was formed under the Emperor Constantine. It was a religion based in part on the Bible and existing Christian beliefs that were already established, but it also seems to have retained a lot of elements of the old Roman religion. Through this, as this form of Christianity was deemed the official religion of Rome, pagan temples were converted into Christian churches, and pagan philosophers who taught in these temples became the Christian pastors. The concept of the philosopher was to search out esoteric knowledge and present it to their audience. Their motivation was to impress those gathered in their hearing with their wisdom, so that they would return to their gatherings and bring others to hear what they had to say. Does this sound familiar? It should, as to this day, it is the core of church services. The Christian pastor is on a never-ending quest for that next big revelation, or that next discovery of some hidden wisdom that they can present in order to fill their pews with listeners, who in turn will financially support the church and the pastor. I once heard a preacher give a whole sermon on his theory about God being 10-dimensional, which was based on secular atheistic string theory and Kabbalist ideas. And the undiscerning masses of his audience just ate it up because it sounded so profound. The only problem was that it was also 100% unbiblical and easily debunked. Prior to this, for at least the first 300 years, the followers of Yeshua met primarily in homes for more intimate fellowship and open discussion of Scripture, and nobody was lording over a crowd trying to impress those gathered with their knowledge. The primary role of what might be called the pastor in these settings appears to be maintaining order and ensuring nobody began to promote heresies. Other than that role, they were a part of the body of fellowship. Under this system of fellowship, they turned the world upside down, and some scholars have proposed that there were hundreds of thousands of people in this network of believers scattered throughout the Roman Empire, meeting in homes and other discreet locations. Catacombs were a popular meeting place, as they were not frequented by pagans whose religious superstitions of being among the dead kept them away. The Christian religion has, at least in part and some in whole, rejected the Torah. It's not just things like the food laws, the Sabbath, and what holidays they celebrate. It rejects the commandment that secret things belong to God and revealed things are for us, all for the sole purpose of following the Torah. Christianity as a whole, with little exception, has chosen to eat from the tree of forbidden knowledge, and through this choice, they deviate from the plain commandments of the Torah on their quest to find things not revealed in the plain text of the Bible. Some would say that if Christianity is not the correct religion, then there's only one other valid biblical alternative, and that's Judaism. After all, every single person who wrote the Bible, with the possible exceptions of Job and Luke, were Israelites. And there is a case to be made that both Job and Luke were Hebrews or Israelites as well. I often remind people that the Bible is a Hebrew book written by Hebrew people about the Hebrew God from the perspective of Torah-keeping Hebrew culture. But is Judaism really the only other alternative? Deuteronomy 18:15-19 describes a prophet like Moses that will rise up, and to him we are to shema, hear, listen to, follow, obey. Acts chapters 3 and 7 reveals that this prophet like Moses is Yeshua, the Messiah. Judaism spends a lot of time studying the Torah, but it rejects Yeshua as the Messiah. In addition to this, for the most part, it treats the Talmud as equal with the Torah, and most in Judaism are at least somewhat influenced by Kabbalah, a Jewish form of mysticism and witchcraft. So Judaism also partakes of the tree of forbidden knowledge. Now, some would contend that Messianic Judaism is the alternative, as it both believes in keeping the Torah and following Yeshua as the Messiah, in harmony with Revelation 14:12. But does it? Much of this belief system teaches that anyone not Jewish is not bound to follow the Torah. This is in direct conflict with Exodus 12:49 and Numbers 15:16 that says the same Torah applies to both the native-born and non-Israelites who enter into covenant, and Ecclesiastes 12:13 that says keeping the Torah applies to all mankind. That's from the Tree of Life version translation, and is what being human is all about. And that's according to the complete Jewish Bible translation. In addition to this, 1 John 2:6 says that followers of Yeshua must walk as he walked, and he lived his life according to the Torah. Since Paul made it a point to say that in the new covenant there is neither Jew, the native-born, or Gentile, non-Israelites, but all are one in Messiah, then 1 John 2:6 applies to all followers of Yeshua without distinction. Exodus 12:49 and Numbers 15:16 are part of the Torah, so these statements are also to be treated as commandments. This means that even at least a portion of Messianic Judaism is also choosing the tree of forbidden knowledge and breaking the Torah by teaching that Gentiles or Christians who are not of a native-born Israelite bloodline do not have to follow the Torah. As such, they break the Torah by violating the commandment that the same Torah applies to all, and they deceive non-Jews into a false belief that denies them of the blessings of obedience. On top of this, just like Orthodox Judaism, Messianic Judaism is often, all too often, influenced by Talmud and Kabbalah. Now, to be fair, I do know some Messianic Jewish rabbis that don't think like any of that. So just to be fair to them, I thought I'd just throw that in there. But then we turn to obscure movements like Hebrew roots, which is often seen as having evolved out of controversial and cultish groups like the Seventh-day Adventists and the followers of Armstrongism. Really, the term Hebrew roots probably refers to at least 3 distinct movements, but due to numerous factors, like the belief in things like the flat earth theory, sacred name debates, calendar controversies, Hebrew word picture codes, treating pseudepigraphal and apocryphal writings as scripture, and many other such things, some have moved toward Messianic Judaism or a Messianic form of Christianity. One such spin-off of this that I've seen is calling itself pronomian Christianity, which seems to be a somewhat Torah positive or Torah based form of Christianity that promotes Torah keeping to a degree, but just like mainstream Christianity may say that it's, not a salvation issue, or that the holidays popular in mainstream Christianity are not really pagan, despite their Roman Catholic origins, of course. All of this is also a result of people choosing forbidden knowledge. Instead of following the Torah for what it literally says, people try to add in things that they have no business dabbling around in, and it creates chaos and disorder. Exactly the same way the initial choice to partake of the tree of forbidden knowledge did. Let me add, there is a difference between what has been labeled the Hebrew roots movement and generally acknowledging that the roots of true biblical faith are Hebraic. Now, it seems that everywhere you turn, religions that are partially based on the Bible but not on the whole counsel of Scripture are always the result of chasing after some aspect of forbidden knowledge. So now let's talk about the tree of Torah life. Proverbs 3:1 and 18, it says, "My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my mitzvot. She is a tree of life to those who embrace her, and blessed will be all who hold firmly to her." This passage typically uses teaching, instruction, or law in its opening line, but the Hebrew word is Torah. My thoughts are that the translators lean toward words that would disassociate the word with the Torah due to a context issue. It would seem on the surface that this is an instruction from Solomon to at least one of his earthly sons. However, this is Scripture, and we must therefore consider that there is a broader context and that this passage is really the Father speaking to all of us who enter into his covenant life through the author of the proverb. Notice that further into the chapter it says that the Torah is a tree of life. This is also very important because Scripture also tells us that the Torah is the way, Psalm 119 verse 1, the truth, Psalm 119 verse 142, and the life, Psalm 119 verses 153 to 154. Most are familiar with Yeshua using these same words of himself in John 14:6. The tree of life is the other tree highlighted in the early Genesis record. It was a tree from which Adam and Eve were free to eat, and had they continually chosen to eat from it, they would have lived forever. But the moment they chose to reject the Torah they had been given, which included the commandment against eating from the tree of forbidden knowledge, they lost their right to the tree of life. The Bible tells us that God closed off the way to the tree of life to prevent access to it, because if they would eat from it in their fallen state, they would live forever in their sin. But a new tree of life emerged. It's the Torah of our God. Many today, those who have been deceived by the serpent through Christian religion, call it things like Jewish laws or the laws of Moses or something like that. These terms are grossly misleading. First of all, the Torah is God's instructions for how to live on this planet in the post-fall world. The state of the earth following the Genesis 3 incident. They were not given by Moses or the Jews. And again, there was no such thing as Jews when Moses received the Torah. The term Jew and Jewish refers to those of the nation of Judah following the kingdom split that followed the reign of Solomon. Second, it's very clear that the Torah was known prior to the time of Moses. According to Genesis 7, no one knew the difference between clean and unclean animals, something that the Torah gives much attention to, Leviticus 11, Deuteronomy 14. And Abraham is said to have followed the Torah, Genesis 26, verse 5. Again, often a poor translation, as the Hebrew text uses the word Torah here as well. Proverbs 11 verse 30 says, the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. The Bible defines righteousness in Deuteronomy 6:25, saying it will be righteousness to us if we take care to do all this commandment before Adonai our God, just as he has commanded us. So righteousness is doing what the Torah says to do and not doing what the Torah says not to do. Yeshua said we will know a tree by its fruit. Matthew chapter 12 verse 33. So the way to know if someone is counted among the righteous followers of Yeshua is that they live according to the Torah, just as he lived. After all, if the Torah is a tree of life, as Proverbs 3 tells us, and the Torah is put into the mind and written on the heart of the covenant believer, as Jeremiah 31 and Hebrew 8 tells us, it will be the sign and the seal of the new covenant, then the believer becomes a tree of life as well, producing the fruit of the tree of life by living according to the Torah. Revelation 2:7 says that those who overcome will be given the right to eat of the tree of life, and Revelation 22:14 says that those who obey the commandments of God will have the right to the tree of life. Isn't it interesting that the Bible opens with people losing the right to the tree of life because they violated the commandment of God, and closes by saying that only those who embrace the commandment of God will be given access to that very same tree of life? The major theme throughout Scripture regarding the tree of life is that it's connected with Torah obedience, while the tree of forbidden knowledge is connected with Torah rejection. And everything modern religion offers, from the flashy Christian pastors sermonizing to the Hebrew roots people caught up in things like Hebrew word picture codes and Kabbalah beliefs, is rooted in forbidden knowledge. Hosea 4:6 records the words of God spoken through the prophet, saying, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Now this tells us that there is a knowledge that is not forbidden, a knowledge that we need, but context is always necessary. Otherwise, many would take this passage, as they do with others, and use it to justify searching out matters that are forbidden knowledge. We see this a lot with things like Bible codes, Hebrew word picture codes, Kabbalist gematria codes, and other such things. Proponents of these things would use a passage like this without considering the surrounding context to justify such esoteric forms of knowledge. Sadly, all of these types of things are easily proven completely false concepts. Hosea 4:1 says, because there is no truth, no covenant loyalty, and no knowledge of God in the land. Then if we finish reading verse 6, it continues, since you rejected knowledge, I will also reject you from being my Cohen, since you forgot the Torah of your God, just so I will forget your children. It becomes clear that the knowledge being addressed here is knowledge of the Torah, knowledge obtained from the tree of life. Proverbs chapter 25 and verse 2 says, it is the glory of God to conceal a matter and the glory of kings to search it out. This is another passage sometimes used to justify a quest for forbidden knowledge. But the context is not telling anyone to seek out forbidden knowledge. Rather, it's an instruction that a ruler searches out a matter through study of the Torah to make a right ruling. In like manner, we today are to study the Torah to make right rulings in our own walk of faith. Again, Deuteronomy 29 verse 28 says, the secret things belong to Adonai our God, but the things revealed belong to us and to our children forever, in order to do all the words of this Torah. Revealed things is a direct reference first to what is plainly instructed in the Torah, and from there to that which is revealed in the rest of Scripture that teaches us about the importance of living by the Torah. We're literally commanded by God not to seek after forbidden forms of knowledge, yet today many, especially in otherwise Torah positive circles, are easily caught up in searching for things they believe are hidden within the text of the Bible more than what is plainly revealed in Scripture. One time I was dealing with a guy that was trying to tell me about how he studies, certain things in Kabbalah and different levels, the Kabbalist levels of study, and I'll get into that another time. And he tried to tell me that I must be a real bore to study the Bible with because I'm just stuck in the plain revealed text. Well, the Bible tells us to be stuck in the plain revealed text. That guy was caught up in things that he has no business in. He was telling me that he studies Kabbalah, but I'm not a Kabbalist. I study Kabbalah, but I'm not a Kabbalist. And he was trying to tell me about Hebrew word picture codes and all this stuff. This is forbidden knowledge. We're not supposed to be dabbling in this stuff. I bring this up because most Torah positive believers wouldn't dare to think it's okay to eat what God said not to eat, things like, pork and shellfish, but they do get caught up in things that violate the commandment from Deuteronomy 29:28. These commandments, like many others, are what are generally referred to by the Hebrew word chok. This word is used as one of three types of commandments in Deuteronomy 4:45, where it's typically translated as statutes. The other two words are edah, which means testimonies, and mishpat, which means ordinances or judgments. The ordinances are things that we need no explanation for, like don't murder people or don't steal from people. Most people can figure out why God would tell us not to do these things. The testimonies are commandments that tell us why we need to keep them. Take, for example, the Sabbath day. We're told to keep it on the seventh day, and no other day is acceptable. And then the explanation is given that this is because in Genesis 2, God set apart the seventh day, blessed it, and made it the Sabbath day. When it comes to statutes, however, we're given no explanation, and they're typically commandments that can easily be taken as non-essential, like the simple act of eating something that looks good or maybe you already know tastes good. A lot of people today know what pork and shellfish taste like, whether because they were raised in a worldly home or an antinomian, Marcionist, Calvinist, or otherwise against Torah Christian home. Though these are the easiest for the serpents to slither in and convince people that they're not important or they don't really mean what some rigid legalist fanatic says they mean, convincing them that they're not all that important, they're actually the most essential of all to obey. Commandments in the statutes category have two characteristics that most others do not. The first is that these are the things that actually most set us apart from the world and from false religion, including false Christianity that teaches against the Torah. There are some in the testimonies category that also set us apart, like keeping the Sabbath or the celebrating the feast days, but all of the statutes set us apart from the world and the world of false religion, including false Christian religion. Nobody is set apart because they don't commit murder or don't rape. These are standards of morality held worldwide, regardless of one's religious beliefs. The second thing regarding statutes is that these are the ones that prove your faith in God and your belief that He is God. The Israelite people have a saying regarding these commandments. Zot hukat haTorah. It means, this is the Torah's decree. In modern American culture, we would say it like this: God said it, that settles it. In other words, if it's in the Torah, we don't need a reason beyond that. It's nice when we can understand without explanation, as with the judgments, or get an explanation, as with the testimonies. But those commandments we must accept and obey with nothing other than faith are the ones that really prove whether you are committed to God and the Bible or simply committed to popular Christian religion and its antinomian lies. You think about it for a moment, right? Do you believe God is God? If you believe God is God, you wouldn't have a problem obeying these commandments that give no explanation, seem to make no sense at all, and are rejected by the masses of religion. You believe God is God. Therefore, His commandment is God's commandment. Let me touch a little more on something else too as I bring this second part of this teaching to a close. While many in Torah positive circles wouldn't think of eating unclean things or working on the Sabbath, they are caught up in various beliefs that fail when properly researched. Their tree of forbidden knowledge includes things like flat earth theory regarding apocryphal and pseudepigraphal writings of scripture, things like Bible codes and Hebrew word picture codes, and numerous other things. The serpent knows that he cannot get them to question the statutes regarding the food laws or the one about not wearing wool and linen together, but he gets entirely too many of them to violate Deuteronomy 29:28 by enticing them with things that look Hebrew. You know, the flat earth people think that they're following a more biblical cosmology. The apocryphal and pseudepigraphal people think that these writings were rejected from being part of Scripture through some conspiracy. The Bible codes and Hebrew word pictures people think that they found some secret messages encoded in the Hebrew language. But things like this are always rooted in the tree of forbidden knowledge, and all too often easily refuted and shown to be false. Look, it's real simple. There are things that we are not supposed to play with. You know, a lot of that stuff, like the Bible codes and Hebrew word pictures codes, are basically a form of witchcraft, trying to divine secret messages from the text. Stay away from such things, and especially stay far away from anyone who's caught up in that kind of thing. Stick with the plain words of the Bible, which is literally what we're supposed to be doing. And this is where I need to leave off for now. We'll pick back up in part 3 of this study, where I'll finish this series of messages out with what I refer to as serpent Christianity. Hey friends, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. If this message has impacted you, please feel free to share it with others. If you're enjoying these teachings, be sure to subscribe and consider becoming a $5 or $10 monthly partner. If you want to make a larger donation, please contact ministry at truthignited.com. If you're interested in more teachings like this from Truth Ignited Ministry, be sure to check out the website at www.truthignited.com and follow Truth Ignited on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. I'll see you next time. Blessings and shalom.